I'm joined in the studio by Lewis Goodall, presenter of Sundays with Lewis Goodall, co-host of the Global's podcast, The Newsagents as well, of course, to talk, initially anyway, about this Robert Jenrick moment that we're all living through. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, it is there will be many people listening, Sheila, who say they couldn't care less about what happens to Robert Jenrick or indeed to Kemi Badenoch or the Conservative Party. But I think it is undeniable, whether you care or not, that it is a big, big moment for the right of British politics. And it's a big moment, I think, for two reasons. And one is personal, to do with Badenoch and her leadership, and the second is structural. The first one, with regards to Badenoch, is that clearly this is a sort of a sign of both strength and weakness for her. In the sense that she would not, I think, have been doing this or able to do this, even maybe just a few months ago. She has managed to extend her command of the Conservative Party in that time, partly because of it's not absolutely comprehensive. It's not any great shakes, really. It's a few points, but some signs of positive improvement in the polls, closing the gap between them and Reform. Some more significant signs of personal improvement in her personal performance in the House of Commons and so on, and sharpening her critique on the government. And thereby she finds herself at the strongest moment of her leadership so far. And she has chosen, although I think she has really in many ways no choice, as a fait accompli, as soon as she found out about this, assuming it is true.
She couldn't sit tight, could she?
She has chosen to make a moment of crisis into a moment of opportunity for herself to consolidate that grip within the Conservative Party. She has removed at a stroke, and apparently with good reason, the sole, serious, credible heir pretender to the Conservative throne, to her seat as leader of the Conservative Party. But it's also in one sense a sign of weakness, in the sense that the very fact that Jenrick was considering making this move in the first place, and the fact that others have and appear to be considering to do so, does still tell you that the Conservative Party's performance, though somewhat improved, remains deeply frail. And this brings me to the second reason why I think it's significant, the structural reason. There has been and will continue to be not just a personal battle between people on who speaks on behalf of the Conservative Party, i.e. for the Tory party leadership. But there is a structural battle going on as to who speaks for the right of British politics. Is it the Conservative Party? Is it Reform? And there have been different views within the Conservative Party about how they should handle it. Some, including Badenoch and others, say we need to destroy Reform. We're the Conservative Party, we speak for the right. There have been others, including Jenrick, who say if we cannot improve our position in the polls to such an extent that we are challenging Reform at the next election, we're going nip and tuck,
then we need to cozy up
to an accommodation. And with Jenrick's removal, either to Reform or just out of the Conservative Party in one form or another, Badenoch is stronger in being able to say, no, we go our own way. So this is a significant moment, both for the personalities, but also moment, for the structure.
It's an interesting moment, definitely. And Jenrick's supporters inside the Conservative Party, or the Conservative MPs I speak of when I say that, do we know, is there any sign that they might defect with him, one or two of them, as a result of her sacking?
Well, I think this is one of the sort of really interesting things to watch. Obviously, Jenrick does have significant support within the Conservative Parliamentary Party. It's roughly speaking, I think you could say it's on the right of the Conservative Party. The briefing that is taking place is that it is not expected that there will be anyone accompanying him, and if he does go to Reform, it will be a sort of sole transition. And I think if that is the case, it will largely be, and this is partly why I think Badenoch clearly, at least in the short term, has strengthened herself with this move, it will be because of the manner of it. Let's assume that the story that Badenoch and the Conservatives have put out is broadly true, and given that Farage didn't deny it, I think we can assume that it's at least largely
Well, he's certainly not planning to defect to the Greens, is he?
No, he's not. And clearly something, we've been briefed that someone in Jenrick's team has been careless, left some documents, maybe even a defection speech, who knows, maybe even a media plan, and that was going to be imminent. In stealing a march on him, in taking that news story away from him, she appears commanding. She appears in control, even though it's a bit of a confidence trick, really, because she wasn't. Because assuming he was going to do that, it was simply a matter of timing. So she has forced the issue. It's clever, it's smart. Some people are saying it's a sign of strength. As I say, it sort of is, but it's also partly because she had no other choice. And certainly, I mean, look, what's in this for Reform and for Farage? One of Farage's biggest problems, which is also one of his greatest strengths, is that, historically speaking, Farage has been a one-man band. The parties that he's led have tended to be largely his personal outfits. And whenever they've become too complex and other people have come on board, he's tended to fall out with them. He's tended to fall into disrepute. That was kind of okay when you were basically leading a none-of-the-above or protest party.
But if you want to lead a government...
But if you want to lead a government, if you're seriously saying, look, we are a serious alternative government, you cannot, in our parliamentary system, have a one-man band. So Jenrick would clearly, because of his seniority in the Tory party, would offer Farage two things. One, continuing to deflate Conservative momentum and the Conservative Party at large, which will help him in that structural battle I was talking about in terms of saying, we are the party of the right, not them. But also, given the fact he was a senior person, given the fact he's very good on social media, given the fact that he has some serious political chops to him, if he were to be offered a position such as Shadow Chancellor or Shadow Home Secretary or whatever it would be...
He'd be a threat to Farage quite quickly.
Well, perhaps, but in the short term at least, it would help counter the argument that this is the Nigel Farage party and nothing else.
Because if you had figures like Jenrick alongside you who'd been in government and in opposition, you can talk about serious governance at that point.
Yeah, and you've got whether you like them or not, you can say that you have a more serious roster of politicians in your cabinet or your shadow cabinet who you could take into government.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? Because the man himself hasn't even spoken yet. We're still waiting to hear if Robert Jenrick is going to make a public statement. I can't imagine he won't. But just before you go, Lewis...
It'd be amazing if he just left it, wouldn't it? Never says anything about it ever again. You know what? I'm just going to let this hang. I'm not bothered.
Cool. You're heading to the States?
Yes, we're going to be going to Minneapolis this weekend because it does seem that there's going to be greater and greater unrest. In fact, just in the last hour or so, Donald Trump has truthed on Truth Social. He said, if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, of course, who are not only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in this once great state. Of course, the familiar sign-offer. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And the Insurrection Act, people won't be...
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's an act. It's a very, very old, controversial piece of legislation in the United States. It goes back to 1807, back to the presidency of Thomas Jefferson. And basically what it enables a president to do is to use the military to quell an insurrection if the state government asks for it. Now, I don't think the state government of Minnesota will want to do that because they're set against Donald Trump and they're saying that these aren't insurrections. But what we've seen in Minnesota, Sheila, is extraordinary. We've basically seen what started off, or what we might familiarly think of as protests or demonstrations or people expressing their political opposition to what ICE are doing, i.e. rounding people up and deporting them and so on, basically become highly, highly militarized. Even overnight, extraordinary scenes coming out of Minneapolis. Drones in the air, explosions. You would
another
think if you were...
person shot, a man shot in the leg. Yeah.
You would think if you were looking at, you would be looking at something in Donetsk, not something that's going on in the upper Midwest of the United States. And Donald Trump is adding to that and augmenting that sense of a military confrontation by raising the prospect of the invocation of the Insurrection Act.
And what would the law allow him to do in terms of which military he sends there? If the Minnesota military is saying not a chance, who does he send? Well,
he could say, but the thing is, in this respect, as we know, Donald Trump tends to do it first and ask questions later, or have questions asked of him later. So it may well be enough for him, even though it doesn't give him the legal authority without the state asking for it, to deploy the military. He may do it anyway. Now, whether the military do that, who knows? Because
here, the military are loyal to the monarch, aren't they?
Yes.
For that reason, to keep them separate. But are they loyal to the Constitution in America?
Well, they're loyal to the president. The president is the commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief, of course.
So they would be loyal to him. But he's supposed to, of course, protect, respect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is why he makes, or whoever is president, makes that pledge every inauguration
Could this be the next standoff, the military and the president?
It could be. Well, I mean, look, we were briefed the other day, Sheila, that the Department of Defense and top military officials have told the White House that they are extremely concerned about the prospect of invading, for example, Greenland. And even though the president has asked them to draw up plans, top military brass in the United States basically saying, we don't think this is legal, we don't think Congress would authorise it. So although the Department of Defense, or Department of War, as it's now called, of course,
yeah.
The DOW, is much changed from Trump's first term and has far fewer kind of checks and sort of grown-ups in it that might have stood against Trump in the first term, there is still some institutional blockage that he might find if he were to try and push it to the extreme. But who knows? Those checks and balances are much weaker than they used to be.